I gotta be honest with you guys. I made a mistake. We're just going to jump into today's topic, so make sure that you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel to be notified about any of our future updates. But I owe every single one of you guys an apology. I told you guys to play this Control Warrior, and unfortunately, this deck, I actually can't recommend it anymore. And it's not because Warrior is bad, and it's not because this archetype is actually, like, not very well supported, because trust me, being able to make a 0 mana 28/28 minion thanks to Blackrock and Roll and Naga Giant is actually powerful. But that does not matter when literally most of the metagame that you're going to be experiencing right now is just Blood DK. There are so many Blood DKs on the ladder right now to where I'm going to be recommending 3 different decks for you guys to try out, but this is the one that I first started with because Bunny Hopper ended up posting this and had very good success with it. Ghost Rider is apparently extremely good in order to find specific resources because Death Knight cards are, you know, there's not that many of them, so being able to discover the right card and the right situation is extremely good. But this is not the best 5-drop in the deck. You want to know what the best 5-drop in the deck is? It is now Screaming Banshee. I completely underevaluated this card because the way you got to think about this card is every single time your opponent trades into it, you're essentially playing a 3/3 soul. And that's not even counting all the other synergies with like Gnome Muncher, with Vampiric Blood, with Arcanite Ripper. There are so many little synergies with this card that it ends up making a big deal because summoning a board as Blood Death Knight is something this deck sometimes takes for granted. But Patchwork, Soul Stealer, Alexandros Morgreen, all these cards are extremely effective in order to give you some actual late game. And then you have cards like Dirty Rat, which are really good when you have cards like Asphyxiate and Obliterate, which somehow Obliterate doesn't make its way into this deck. I think you can maybe cut a Heart Strike for Obliterate. That makes a lot of sense here. But Bunny Hopper, this was his take on the list. But what are some other Blood Renathal, or some maybe non-Renathal Blood DKs that you can maybe take on the ladder? And here's an answer if you want to play a 30-card Blood version of the deck. And I'm honestly not too sold on the Bloodringer Surfang, but somebody ended up posting this deck onto Twitter, had like a top 50 legend rank with it, but I'm mostly assuming this is just because Blood DK is extremely good. I don't think Deathbringer Surfang is that good. However, something to keep in mind is with all the lifesteal and all the life regeneration you have in this deck, maybe summoning a taunt minion when, say, you're going up against like a hero-powered druid and they hate seeing taunt minions, like that could sometimes be effective, and with how much life gain this deck has, maybe you don't care too much about this. But all of the key cards are still here. You still have Screaming Banshee, you still have Gnome Muncher, Alexandros Morgreen, Patchwork Soul Stealer, and like pretty much this deck is very, very well anticipated. But you want to know what isn't anticipated? The deck that I will be playing today on stream. I have this and a Shaman deck that I'm really excited to start playing today, and it's not just because this is Renathal Blood and it's going to win, but I think I'm going to be able to start beating up on the other Blood DKs that I see in the ladder because as long as they don't hit my ETC, then after they play their Patchwork, I can play ETC, get my Rivendare, and then suddenly I have a very legitimate win condition to where if I stall out the game, I am 100% going to win. Unless this card finds another Patchwork, but let's not think about that. But regardless, I think this deck has a lot of potential for it because it has a way of being able to beat the Blood DK metas right now. And if we take a look at some stats, it'll really start to put things in perspective of just how good Blood DK has become in the past week. I might need to move my face. Yes, let's move my face a little bit so you guys can be enlightened. But in just regular Legend, we have Blood DK, Pure Paladin, Frost Aggro Death Knight, which is going to be on this list, but I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's literally the same list. But these are the best 2 decks right now, Blood Death Knight and Aggro Frost. Because when you go into top 1,000, boom. Look at those. Only Death Knight in Tier 1. Even Outcast Demon Hunter, the deck that everyone was praising and calling for nerfs on day 1. This is why we don't want to call day 1 nerfs, because well, usually we don't want to. Cards like Shockspitter and day 1 Demon Hunter when it was first released, we definitely needed something for that. But I don't believe Outcast Demon Hunter fits that description quite yet, because it does have things that beat it, albeit decks that are freeze everything or heal everything, so it's just a complete, utter opposite. Complete opposition of what this deck wants to see. But Pure Paladin, Relic Demon Hunter, Unholy Death Knight, Silverhand Paladin, I think this is just similar to Pure Paladin. These are all decks that are doing very well right now, and in Tier 3, you have like Mech Paladin, Secret Rogue, Bubble Paladin. Miracle Rogue is apparently falling behind a little bit, but I think that's because Blood DK is such a terrible matchup for them. Undead Priest, APM Priest, which I'm honestly kind of surprised to see. Wait, we don't have Radiant Elemental anymore, so this is just regular Sylvana Priest. I don't know how this deck works. Face Hunter, Thaddeus Warlock, Tony Druid, Totem Shaman, Mech Mage, Hero Power Druid. These are all really good decks that'll do well if you are just trying to climb from the diamond ranks. But just know that the moment that you start going up against the tier 1 meta, it's going to be a little bit difficult if you are playing these other decks. But if your goal is to have fun in Hearthstone, then you need to check out this clip right here, because this is probably going to be the next deck that I'm actually going to play on stream.
It's definitely.
I'm not going to say anything. Just sit here and experience it, and we'll go over the deck here in a second. But I absolutely love that somebody was able to figure out the way to play this combo, because now it makes sense. You make a Ragnaros. You're already noticing the key card in hand. You're already noticing it. Your criminal lineup. And then because you run Queen Ashara, you can play... Wait, 0 mana? Wait, why is it 0 mana?
By fire be purged!
He must have reduced it. He must have reduced it with,
Die, insect!
I actually don't know why that cost 0.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Someone might have to explain that to me, because I don't know how we got that
Absolutely
discount. But regardless,
Absolutely.
there you go.
Dude.
7 Ragnaroses all in one turn, and this is going to be the reason why I dubbed the deck this specific name. But Avenge Sevenfold Druid, because you summon 7 Ragnaroses. It's a really dumb name, I know. But I think this deck has a lot of potential, because Shaman feels like it has, you know, ways of being able to deal with these big decks, because it has cards like Command of Neptulon and Altered Chord, which really do help juice up the Jazz base. And it's just like, I've seen this deck technically pop off by turn 7 back when I was playing the Theorycraft stream in all context, but I saw this deck pop off on turn 7, and since then I'm wondering if there's something legitimate here, and Pheno might have come across something that makes a lot of sense. Lightning Storm makes sense to play when you have a Jazz base equipped, or even just, you know, as regular removal, and it's just great to see Lightning Storm as a card again. But Ancestral Knowledge coming back is just such a good card for Jazz base mana cheating, as well as just making sure that you actually draw the combo. Oh, wait a minute, Inza! Inza is how the Queen card costs 0. Oh my god, that's busted! Because the Queen Ring will become, did we see the, okay, we don't see the tokens. The Queen Ring will become an Overload card, and then Inza will discount it to 0. Wow, that's actually busted, dude. So the stocks of this deck just went up a little bit better in my eyes, because you can also play Inza and to pack the house on 6. Oh my god, I like the look of this deck. I can't wait to start playing this. But Pheno had a lot of fun with this deck yesterday. I don't think it's necessarily the best deck to play right now, but it looks like one of the most fun decks to play. And honestly, I think that having fun can sometimes be a little bit more enjoyable, obviously, than winning games. But why not do both? This deck can sometimes do both, and I will hopefully be able to report positive stats on this deck once I start playing it. But now that we've had fun, we have to go back to playing the game and playing to win, because control decks have been on the rise due to Outcast, Demon Hunter, and all these aggro decks just being super popular on the first day. That tends to happen with Hearthstone metas. So it's just like, this deck gives me Baron's Priest vibes, where it's just like, it's going to be able to beat almost anything if you play this correctly. And this was a deck that was made by Zacko and doesn't run like Dirty Rats or anything like that. So this deck is just a lot of tempo. There's not a lot of things you're trying to do to disrupt outside of running cards like Whirlpool in order to get a bunch of value. But one synergy that is very important to note is Sister Sylvana with Love Everlasting. So if you guys don't know how Love Everlasting works, if you're familiar with Wildpaw Caverns, it like equips itself as like a part of your hero, so that way you know if the requirement has been filled or not. But when you have Sister Sylvana, you literally always have a spell to play for 1 mana to discover a shadow spell. So that is just going to make sure that Love Everlasting literally is everlasting like a Gobstopper and is never going to go away. So that synergy by itself is already kind of toxic. Queen, it seems to be finding its way into every single deck, because a lot of decks are playing spells if they're not trying to just straight up kill you with a lot of minions and early aggression. So it's kind of surprising to see how Queen has made just such an amazing resurgence in almost every single control deck. And who knows, maybe you could play this in Blood. It's probably not that good in Blood, in all honesty. You don't care about the random Colossal or additional spell. But in any case, you have Dispossessed Soul in order to help find some more options, because you do run 4 locations. It does make sense in order to run that card. It's not just Copium. But what I will say is, I really hope that this deck is unpopular because I don't like Control Priest. I would rather deal with Blood DKs because at a certain point, you know that you're just going to win the game. But the biggest issue that I have against Control Priest is that you're always in a position where it's like, I'm one turn away. I'm one turn away. I'm about to kill them. I'm about to kill them. And now it's just completely possible. And now I want to concede the game. Blood DK, you already know when you're about to lose, and there's no conversation around that. But regardless, if you like Control Priest, this is probably going to be your time to shine in order to beat up on all the aggro decks that you'll be seeing on your climb. Now, if you're someone who doesn't like to play Control Priest, but also doesn't like the idea of playing the typical aggro deck, then I've got some good news for you, because Fell Demon Hunter is making legitimate breaks in the meta again, and I think it's not just because relics are really good, but they got a lot of decent support with cards like Immolation Aura, for example. Immolation Aura is just insane to think about if you have a Silvermoon Arcanist, because this is just a deal 4, for example. Yes, you have Blood Mage Thalnos to make this a deal 3, and it's technically a little bit better since you don't throw away one of your win conditions. But you do have 2 Silvermoon Arcanists, so it's really just about the flexibility and sometimes stopping your opponent versus building up your own tempo. Obviously, you still have Lady, you still have Relics in order to juice up this card to unreal amounts of damage, but you still do have Rowdy Fan that's making an appearance in this deck as a one-up, because you don't want to buff up your minions, you just want to buff up the Lady Sethano, and if any of these cards get discounted, Unga Bunga, you're going to deal a lot of damage. So I think that this deck has a lot of potential. Casey ended up piloting this deck to, I think, top 100 in Legend, so there's a lot going for this archetype. I do find it kind of sad that a lot of old archetypes from the previous expansion are still extremely powerful in this one, but at least this deck is going in a somewhat different direction, kind of. Maybe actually it's still pretty much going in the same direction. I was trying to argue something where it's like we're playing more control because we're playing Immolation Aura, but let's be honest, you're just playing relics, you're doing the typical thing, and at least like Zymox is still kind of playable, right? Like this card doesn't get cut. Regardless, I'm just kind of ranting at this point. I don't like that Relic Demon Hunter is a popular deck again, just because I want things to change up a little bit. But at least this deck is still technically fun to play, so I don't necessarily hate that it's part of the metagame. And now that we've got the good decks out of the way, I want to show you guys 3 more decks that have a ton of potential, but just need just a little something else just to get to that tier 2, tier 1 potential. Because one thing that we saw on ladder and actually lost to was a Black Rock and Roll Warrior playing in a Menagerie build. So the idea is that, you know, you charge the early game, you try to deal as much damage as possible, play Black Rock and Roll as like your turn 5, sometimes as like your comeback card in case they clear the board, and then you have like 11 attack War Gears, you have a gigantic Olgra, Remornia, and 1 Amalgam Bands. Maybe there's a way to fit like Trench Stalker and another like charge card in this deck, but this is something that I made because I saw somebody play Frightened Flunky against me in this deck, play Black Rock and Roll, and then they played a gigantic Remornia in order to win the game. So maybe this is just a high roll deck, maybe some things need to be changed. But in case you guys are wondering why the Frightened Flunky is in here, it's because it's a taunt. It gives you another minion that can sometimes, you can weave in with another minion tribe. I really don't know why this card is in here, in all honesty. I just kind of tried to copy the exact same deck that somebody beat me with, and well, I think this is a good start. Stereo Totem actually has a lot of potential as a one-of, because if you do buff this card with Party Animal and play this on 3, or even like coin Party Animal into this on 2, a 1/4 goes a pretty long way, especially when it keeps buffing your cards over and over and over again, and I just think this card has a lot of potential as a single one-of. However, maybe we need to fit in like a Trench Stalker, maybe we take out the Frightened Flunkies for like one more big card in order to make Black Rock and Roll really good. But trust me, Black Rock and Roll with an 11 attack immediate War Gear going for Magnetize, that is super fun. I don't know how good this deck is, so if you're gonna craft this, please, please, please do a little bit of research to see if this is going to be good against your metagame. Maybe get some of people's opinions or something about it, but I would argue that this is not a deck you should invest all of your dust into. Unfortunately, Warrior is still kind of struggling right now, and it makes me super sad to say this because I was extremely excited to play with Black Rock and Roll and break the meta, but it looks like Death Knight is still going to be your biggest issue. Frost Death Knight freezes your board so you can't do anything, and Blood DK is literally unkillable at times. But I will say I did beat 1 Blood DK out of 3 games with this deck, so it has potential. I don't know how much the potential is, but I think this deck is still really fun regardless. Next up is going to be another fun deck, and I'm not really sure how to build hero power Druid, but Pheno had an interesting idea of being able to just, you know, play the hero power cards, sustain yourself with the hero power, and then you can win the game with, like, Flower Child in order to bring back a whole bunch of minions. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't bring back minions in this deck. You draw a bunch of minions, you get your Tulpior, play a bunch of cheap nature cards, and then you can play Drum Circle on those cheap nature cards. So that's kind of the idea of this deck. It's almost like a token-esque deck, but it's not running a bunch of token minions. It's more so centered around the hero powers. And one thing that I'm kind of curious about is why Pheno doesn't have this card in here. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that this card is just a little bit slow, and unfortunately, even with like a Summer Flower Child tutor effect, it still doesn't do what you need to immediately, because on turn 6, you're playing minions that don't have taunt, don't do anything immediately, and you're still waiting for them to die so you can actually get their high roll. So I think Unending Swarm probably doesn't make its way into Hero Power Druid if we're trying to make it into a legitimate powerhouse deck, but this is an interesting way of being able to do this. I'm not really sure why Fizzle is in the deck. Not really sure. Maybe it's to get more nature cards, so you're always generating another board, for example. Maybe it's because you want to get like another Tulpior, so that way each spell that you play gives you 2 cards. That seems a little bit greedy, so it's probably not that. It's probably the first one. But Photographer Fizzle making its way into this deck is still interesting nonetheless, because maybe you can get like another Drum Circle or something like that. I think this card does have potential, but I personally have not played this deck. But Pheno said that this is one of his favorite decks of day 2, and I think if you're looking for a hero power deck, this might be one of the best directions that you can take the deck right now. And something else I just now thought about, Fizzle with Astalor. Astalor with extra steps. Just put a Nubercon in this deck, and then boom, it's already toxic, right? And the last deck that I'm going to show you guys are my current improvements on Naga Mage, because I have to say, this is still the deck that I'm having the most success with, but this is the deck that I by far have been playing the most. I have about a 53-ish, like, okay, so I played like 50 games, and I think I'm like 27 and 24 or something. Like, I've just started to get above a 50%, and it's honestly thanks to this build of the deck, because Seafloor Gateways is insane. It is just an insane card. And one thing that I'm actually thinking about is, what if we were to take out the other level up, just because it doesn't really do a whole lot, and we put in 1 Jellyfish. 1 Jellyfish could actually make a lot of sense in this deck, because sometimes you just need the 1 in order to start building up the Light Show. If you get 1 out of Vast Wisdom, it's automatically like the choose card. You just insta-pick it. You insta-pick this card almost every single time, because you can make your Light Shows deal 4 damage, sometimes 6 if you get 2 of them. So I like the idea of maybe hard-running Jellyfish, but Volume Up is a card that I am really trying to figure out if this does have a place in the deck, because sometimes you want that refill, but if you're refilling, you could argue that you're going to lose anyway, so you want to use this card beforehand, and if you're using this card beforehand, you have to play Mage Scribe, but I already cut out one of these cards, so I think I am actually going to try this deck today to see how it performs, but I mostly wanted to put this deck in this list, not only to tell you guys about Naga Mage, so hopefully you start playing it, but because of the Seafloor Gateway synergy. In case, I don't think I actually explained this yet, but you draw Mistake, you draw your Amalgams. Mistake being 0 mana, okay? Mistake being 0 mana means, unironically, if you have coin and you have a spell in hand and a bunch of the cards to help support this, you could turn 4 combo again. Coin, Spitelash Siren, into Mistake, into a Rewind, into a Amalgam to find another Naga. Like, you're already seeing the potential of this deck, and it's all because Seafloor Gateway helps progress this literally 1 turn faster, which is the whole reason why they nerfed this card to begin with. So Naga Mage still has potential. Naga Mage is still one of my favorite decks of this expansion so far, and most likely, if you tune into the stream today, I might be playing this deck at some point. So if you want to see some Naga Mage, come by twitch.tv/ClarkHellScream and let me know that you want to see all the Naga Mage in the world. Because trust me, I love this deck. I really hope this deck has potential, and I really want it to be good. But there you have it, guys. Those are the best decks of the meta right now, as well as a few sprinkled fun decks in the mix, so that way, you know, I'm pleasing a little bit of everybody. So if you like this kind of content, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel to be notified about any of our future updates. The last video that I posted yesterday is still relevant. Those decks are still good. Don't think that Outcast, Demon Hunter, and Unholy DK are absolutely unplayable. Those decks are still doing very well, but just know that in a field of Blood DKs, you are probably going to have to keep in mind that those matchups are going to feel very, very bad. I don't think there's going to be any nerfs this week. I think it's still too soon to call or to demand any nerfs right now, but just know that Blood DK, I think, is in a very dangerous territory of getting hit to some degree, maybe like Obliterate gets unnerved back to dealing damage to the way that it used to or something like that. But at that point, it's just speculation. So if you guys enjoy this kind of content, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and we'll see you for the next one.